Hello there guys, my name is Stephen and welcome to my film channel where I look at all the latest releases and discuss all the big TV shows and films just for you guys. And today we're going to be taking a very close look at Avengers Endgame, because who isn't?
If we do this, we'd be going in short-handed.
Yeah, you mean because he killed all our friends?
We owe this to everyone who's not in this room to try.
Don't forget, if you are a big fan of films and TV and culture and entertainment and all that kind of stuff, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And don't forget as well, there's going to be plenty of spoilers in this video, so if you haven't seen Endgame yet, get yourself to a cinema, and maybe Shawshank Redemption too, probably not on the cinema but on TV somewhere, then come back and watch this video, because we're going to be talking about all the plot devices and basically loads of stuff to do with the film. Now obviously the title of this video is why Avengers Endgame is as important as Shawshank Redemption. If you don't understand the context of this, basically when it was released last week, the whole world went absolutely crazy for the Avengers and the MCU in general, and he flew to the top of the IMDb charts as the most highly rated film of all time. It has calmed down since then, but obviously that set a lot of people off in general who weren't happy that Avengers Endgame, to them just a comic book film, was as highly rated as one of the most critically acclaimed, if not, well, literally the most critically acclaimed film of all time in Shawshank Redemption. They weren't happy one bit, and today I thought I'd take a close look at and argue why actually Endgame is as important as Shawshank Redemption, and it does deserve the credit and respect that some people aren't giving it. Lots of people immediately went down to the whole genre kind of snobbery you associate with kind of comic book films and action films, kind of implying that because they're nowhere near as portentous or serious as the likes of Shawshank Redemption, they don't deserve the same treatment. They're just big kids films according to these people, which of course is a very simple and narrow-minded view, and I don't really agree with that at all. So today I'm going to run through all the reasons why I think so. Firstly, we have to give the broader Marvel Cinematic Universe the credit that it actually deserves. To have 22 films in such a short period of space, all of them largely pretty good. There are one or two maybe minor exceptions to this. I'm looking at you, Hulk. But in general, to write this kind of huge saga, this Infinity Saga as they call it, spanning so many films, so many worlds, and can bring them all together so cohesively and so coherently, is an achievement in itself. It's a cinematic feat that's not been done before in the mainstream anywhere near this level. And given how regularly these films come out, you have to really appreciate how big an undertaking that is. I know that doesn't directly affect Endgame in terms of the bigger picture, but the Endgame is the culmination of astonishing amounts of work. To put it simply, the Infinity Saga is something that's never been done before. Cinema has been changed forever, thanks to the likes of Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, Spider-Man, and all the co-supporters. This cast really has genuinely changed the way people see cinema, what it can be. As a result, we've seen the likes of the DC trying to replicate the universe. We'll probably see the same with the Pokemon universe after the probably inevitable success of Detective Pikachu, and so on. And we'll see a whole bunch of films looking to build this world around their characters. It really has changed how we approach films and what they can be and what they can mean to people. And to see it done with such flair and such creativity really shows how much has gone into these films. And it's not really just that. I think you have to remember that you judge these films on different levels. You can't really judge Shawshank against Avengers Endgame in terms of the plot narratives and all that kind of stuff. They're very different. It's like saying rugby and football are the same. They're not. They're both sports, yes, but that's pretty much where the similarities end. They're so different in terms of context and tone. I know they're both films and so on, but they're so different in such a different world. You may as well be comparing chalk and cheese. They're really that different. It's like how you can't really compare, I don't know, The Little Mermaid to Jurassic Park. Both just entertainment films, but both aren't worth more on their own individual merit. Both are no worthy because they're more serious than the other or anything like that. You wouldn't see anyone arguing that the likes of The Lion King or other such critically acclaimed Disney films aren't important, because I guess it maybe time has been kinder to them. I feel like sometimes with Avengers, it's the fact that they're very new, the fact that they're very current, and the fact that mainly they're so colourful and seemingly comedic at times. People take that against them, but it shouldn't really count, because if they had maybe the classic old school art form of, say, a Disney animated film, people would be a lot kinder towards it, in the way that people are more kinder towards Pixar Pixar films. Toy Story, no one would ever question that. So why would they question Avengers Endgame? And past these arguments anyway, I think people underplay how important the MCU and the Avengers Endgame is to the wider community of film goers and people across the world. Now, thanks to the absolute legend that is Stan Lee, the man who's changed the face of comic book industry, he brought these characters to the world that were needed at the time when they were brought to him. The MCU has done so much for cinema, so much for a progressive nature around the world that people don't really fully appreciate at times. They've really honoured Stan's legacy with how progressive they are and how important they are and how many people they actually speak to. And for me, the one thing that stood out about this film that I was not expecting was the heart in that film. This film had so many messages, so many ways of dealing with such human stories on such a grand scale, a grand universal scale that crossed galaxies and God knows what else. Essentially, the MCU and the Avengers Endgame covered it all. You only have to start with the first act where the weight of what happened at the end of Infinity War in terms of the snap and how many people disappeared, it was dealt with a way that I simply wasn't expecting. The way it showed how the world was trying to come to terms with existence as they know it just changed in the blink of an eye, and half the world's population disappearing. And he showed a moment where it flashed forward 5 years and nothing really had changed. People couldn't get over the girl. The collective reminders of everything that went around them were all still there. Half the neighbourhoods were kind of run down and abandoned. The world was trying to get back on its feet. It was very kind of solemn, it was very heart-moving, and an intro to the film that I genuinely wasn't expecting. I thought it'd come out flying a lot more, but I'm glad it didn't, because it showed a somber side to the Avengers film. I seen the likes of superheroes sat there consoling people in grief lessons, and Black Widow herself looking to try and move on with some sense of normality but struggling to hold back the tears. It just felt so powerful. It wasn't just there either. An actual literal god in Thor struggled to move on with life. He went into basically a spiral of grief and depression. He basically tried to cover up in the tough man act kind of way, but it was pretty obvious that he had a delayed reaction to the loss of his mother. Throughout the film, he was largely an uncontrollable mess. And I felt so sorry for him. If a man that is an actual literal god could struggle so much with the loss of his mother and his friends around him, then why can't we? It felt so empowering to see someone so powerful look so weak. It told such a human story, and it showed that we can all go through these problems at the same time at any time, regardless of how strong and great we may appear to the others looking outwards. And it wasn't just Thor either. It was in Natasha's sacrifice as well to let Clint hopefully go back to his family if the plan actually came through. Natasha as well clearly felt like she had very little left to give to the world, a broken shell of a person compared to who she was in previous films. Understandably so, living with that guilt and that grief of someone who felt like they had the answers to everything in the world but couldn't solve them at the moment, and to be so selfless and so loyal to a friend there and do what she did took great bravery. There was also Bruce Banner's acceptance of Hulk. Now, if you haven't seen the film, of course, there's so many spoilers here and I'm sorry for this, but obviously we were all taken by surprise when we saw that Bruce Banner essentially merged with the Hulk himself. He even spoke about his previous perceptions of Hulk as being something as a disease, essentially saw that part of something that he wanted to suppress and he was ashamed of, but now he'd accepted that and merged into this half Banner, half Hulk kind of just symbiotic happy person. It was almost like a metaphor for accepting sides of yourself that you've never really been comfortable with. Yet again, maybe another metaphor for depression. Thankfully, I've never been through that, but I've read a lot of accounts where people say to deal with some of their anxiety and the depression that they have to face these ugly truths about themselves at times and really try and get a grip with them, confront them and stand up to them. And to me, and I mean no offense to anyone who's been through this, it's a very simple psychological look at it from my angle. It looked like to me that was a metaphor for that Bruce had accepted that Hulk was a part of him, that he couldn't run from it, and if he embraced it, it'd make him a stronger person. And he did, and he undoubtedly became a stronger person. And it wasn't just that. The beating heart of the film, the man who kickstarted the whole MCU, Tony Stark and Iron Man, his fitting and absolutely poignant and terribly emotional ending summed up this story perfectly. Here was this man who kickstarted the MCU, who was a rampant egomaniac, an arms dealer who felt no guilt of what he basically inflicted on this world in terms of his intelligence. He used it in such a negative way, and to see him come full circle despite having a child that he knew would lose to save the others and spare them of a world not worth living in. it took a great deal of courage and bravery and self-sacrifice. It was almost like he completed his redemption arc for the years of suffering that he brought to the world. Yes, he obviously went past that, and during Avengers, the first collective movie, he showed his greater understanding what it takes to be a team player. But this, to me, was Tony's ultimate sacrifice to protect all those around him that he loved, despite finally finding peace. It was heartbreaking to watch Tony really accept his fate, and to see Pepper and his daughter move forward. Genuinely emotional, poignant, and this wasn't just a kid's film. This was a story about a man who had everything taken away from him, could have got it all back, yet had to accept nothing. Even on a smaller scale, it showed the importance of the underdog. Ant-Man, a character's largely being comedic and a little bit silly, played perfectly by Paul Rudd, I must admit, but he was, in the end of the day, the saviour. He was the one who had the idea, who came back from the brink of existence, brink of nothing in the quantum realm, to actually inspire these people to do something bigger. Even if he didn't quite understand the science behind it himself, he was the man who pushed it. And to show such a little man, quite literally at times, be so big, quite literally at times, was really kind of triumphant, I felt. And though sometimes some of the kind of themes and the metaphors were a little on the nose, it was still great to see, in general from the MCU, this kind of really progressive leap. To show at one point all the female Avengers there looking so powerful. To see maybe the Captain America legacy passed over to the first ever black Captain America. That just spoke absolute volumes about how this kind of universe moves people's perceptions forward, and obviously the legacy left behind by Captain Marvel and Black Panther is just such a force for good in the cinematic world in general that people don't really tend to appreciate it anywhere near enough. The easy option for the MCU would be to ignore this, for to play it down, because they had loads of criticism, they've had loads of negative feedback. They could have played it down, but they took the responsibility, and people have to appreciate that, because it would have been easy for them to ignore it, but they didn't. They doubled down, and they're sending positive messages more and more with every film. At the end of the day, though, the sheer scale of these films, the bombast, the humour, the warmth, the emotion, the cinematic spectacle that they were, to astound you, to make you gasp out loud, to make you laugh and cry and whoop the air with delight. This is what these films have achieved in a way that most films don't. They're up there with the likes of your Harry Potters and your Lord of the Rings and all these legacies. I was talking to my better half last night, and she was saying that when she was a little girl, she used to look up to the likes of Hermione from Harry Potter, and she felt so proud of her to see this sassy little girl with so much intelligence. I can only begin to imagine how it feels watching these films from someone else's little kid's perspective, seeing these such powerful characters and how they want to be them. They must inspire children throughout the world. To see over in Wakanda Shuri's incredible intelligence, her being the most badass of characters, imagine what that must feel to a young girl somewhere across the world. To see Captain Marvel be arguably the most powerful character in the MCU, I'm not going to argue over that one. Get in the comments if you want to tell me wrong, but you know what I'm saying. To see that, imagine being a little girl seeing that. Imagine being a little boy from Queens watching Spider-Man. Imagine being pretty much anyone dealing with some of the troubles that some of these characters have gone through. I just love that they send these positive messages to young people throughout the world, and they send them in such an sometimes obvious and subtle way. They bring these important messages to films where kids maybe wouldn't be able to appreciate them, by the likes of Shawshank Redemption. Watch a 12-year-old boy watch that film, they will struggle. But these films, these Marvel films, the fact that they can tell a story so powerful, so emotional, and make it so accessible to people of all ages from any corner of the world shows how good that these films can be. Superheroes, by very definition, are empowering. They are meant to be the very best of us, what we dream to be, what we look up and wish. I wish I could do that. We've all had those moments as kids, as adults maybe, but to me what makes these superheroes special and empowering is that they are just like us, and that the MCU portrayed them as imperfects. They portrayed them as people who suffer with emotions. They showed them at the strongest, then at the same time showed them at the weakest, and that to me is what makes Avengers Endgame and the MCU incredibly important. It shows humility, it shows the best and the worst of the humankind, and it does it with such an elegance and grace and so much fun that these films are so important. Anyway, that's just my take on Avengers Endgame. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you are new to this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'll be doing loads of videos over the summer about films and all that kind of stuff. These are just my opinions. Let me know what you make of this in the comments below. Avengers Endgame is a fantastic film. Is it the best film ever? That is not for me to decide. Is it important and is it brilliant? Of course it is. See you later.